It grows in bunches. I've got my hunches for us to get together and sing. Sing! Ring, 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 ring. Banana phone.
What the hell is that?
Welcome back to the To Be Read podcast. I'm Julie.
And I'm Vanessa. And today we are talking Fourth Wing.
We are diving into Rebecca Yarros Empyrean Series.
Do you ever get weirded out by the fact that people name series that's not the first book?
Yeah.
The Empyrean Series.
Yeah, no, the only time I've ever called it the Empyrean Series is right now.
It's right. But that happens with a few books, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it doesn't. Spark of the Everflame. I always say the Everflame series, and it's the Kindred's Cursed.
Yeah, that one's odd. We are talking about Iron Flame and Fourth Wing today.
And our hopes
for Onyx Storm.
Yeah.
Which is coming out in January.
That's just around the corner, really. I want to talk really quickly before we dive into the book about the marketing, because Rebecca Yarros kind of hit a weird time in the book world where I'm lucky enough to have bought a first edition with the dragons, and do you remember how unhinged everyone was?
I don't, because I came in late.
Oh, it was an epic battle. At one point, I even looked into it, selling my first edition copy, because I bought it for $30, maybe. And then at one point they were $300.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but I didn't bring them today, but I have 4 different sets of them. But they made me think I needed them. Here's this new beautiful version, which, by the way, Lilac Libraries are my favorite.
They are stunning.
Yes.
Absolutely stunning.
Foiling on them is beautiful.
And the page inserts, the art in them is gorgeous.
They really celebrated artwork in these books. That's kind of cool. But the way that all these publishers jumped at the gun to actually produce their own versions, because it was just such a popular book. So marketing wise, they really hit it.
And they really leaned into what social media could do for them.
Yeah.
And boy, did social media take over.
I know. I kind of felt bad because some people were like, oh, it's overhyped. And I feel like they might have liked it more if they didn't think that,
Yeah.
The games we play in our social media world. But the actual book of Fourth Wing, let's talk about that.
Let's talk about it.
We're talking about Rebecca and how she...
Yeah, so Rebecca is the author of 22 novels. She's most well known for this series, Fourth Wing, the Empyrean Series. She's a wife and mom of 6. Her husband served in the military for over 20 years, and that's when she started writing, when he was out on deployments and stuff. She started off with contemporary romance, but now she's entered her fantasy epic era with Fourth Wing, which has now taken the world by storm. Fourth Wing was released May 2nd, 2023. It quickly achieved viral status on Book Talk and was propelled to the #1 spot on the New York Times bestseller list, where it sat for 18 weeks.
Is that a long time? I don't know.
That's a long time. So I actually got online and read about how you get yourself on the New York Times bestseller list. You have to sell a certain number of copies in different distributions in order to make it on the list.
Okay.
So to sell that certain number of copies for 18 weeks is quite impressive, that you're really selling books.
I mean, let's think about it. That's math. Math is hard. That's 4 months? 4 months
It's a little
straight?
over 4 months, yeah. Yeah, that's 4 months.
Yeah.
So I actually didn't read Fourth Wing until October of 2023.
Okay. So that was definitely late to the game.
That was late to the game. I'd seen it, but I was just I don't know if it's my thing. I was not in my fantasy space at that time.
This was your first book, right?
This was my first diving in to fantasy. This was it. Because shortly after came Avatar. But yeah, this was the first really big dive for me. So it was a little difficult first time through, a little lost. It was a slower read, but...
Really? You thought it was slower?
I mean, just I felt like it took me a while just because I had a hard time.
Oh, just to get into it?
I devoured it. I think I read it in 3 days.
Okay.
But it was my first jaunt into fantasy as an adult. I'd read fantasy as a kid, of course. But
This book is a wild one because it brought a lot of people, much like ACOTAR, it brought a lot of people into the fantasy world fold. I'm here for it. I'm a fantasy girl. I like it. So it wasn't too far out of left field for me. I like a good dragon story, you know.
That's where it really got me, was the dragons, especially like the bond that the writers have with their dragons.
Oh, it's so unique.
It is so, and to be able to like speak into each other's minds, because that's kind of something that gets me in other books too. Any sort of like bond, you're kind of speaking into each other's minds. I'm a
Karanem.
Karanem, that whole thing.
Bonds.
I'm a sucker for that. I love that kind of like secret relationship that's just like private, you know? So I loved that. The action right off the bat, the stakes. I mean, Violet's being thrown into this world where people die. People are dying from like page 10 on throughout the rest of the book. And like, they're not just like,
spoiler alert,
they're not just like dying by, they're like brutally like disappearing off the face of the earth, like nothing but a black scorch mark.
And
remains.
like murder too. Like it's not like, oh, this person went missing. It's like, nope, we threw you off the parapet.
Yeah. It's pretty brutal, but that actually I feel like was kind of exciting because even though I hadn't read ACOTAR yet.
Kind of exciting.
Well, I don't know if it's, I think just like the stakes were high. It's just like, oh my gosh, like people actually die in this book. That's a struggle that I have in some books where it's just like either people die, but they come back, or they come back to life. And I'm just like, no, it takes away the stakes, you know? People even die in Harry Potter. And I still haven't forgiven J.K. Rowling for a few of those deaths.
Rebecca Yarros does a lot of things really well. I feel like the world she built was really well done. However, it felt like the things she did in the world were not well described.
I think that's a really good point to make. She's very good at telling, not very good at showing. One of those things for me was Dane and Violet's relationship. I felt like she was really good at telling us that Dane and Violet are besties. She did not give me proof that they have this deeply ingrained childhood friendship. Dane just kind of felt like, oh, cool, you're here. I'm happy you're here. Now we need to get you to the scribe. I don't know. I didn't feel like Dane's half of his soul was there with him.
Right. I agree. There's a couple of mentions of, oh yeah, we grew up together. And when I caught it more in the rereads on like some of the parts where he touches her, not her face, because I think that's the only parts where his powers come in, but he like rubs her shoulders after a hard day and things like that. I caught a lot more of in the reread, but initially I felt the same. I was like, oh, but are they really that good of friends? Or
the one time I felt it pretty strongly was, I think it's like right after Violet crosses the parapet and she gets excited about seeing Dane. And I liked that description of the giddiness that you feel when you see like someone that you really care about, or like your best friend or whatever.
Yeah.
I really liked that. And the little moments of like him rubbing her shoulders, but I was just like, but where is this coming from?
Yeah.
And I think
flashbacks would have helped.
A couple of flashbacks, not a lot, but a couple would have been really helpful. One thing that I think propelled this book to popularity is that it checks every box. You've got Divergent stakes, Hunger Games stakes, every like possible fantasy. I just felt like this was a conglomerate of all the popular fantasy things. It felt nostalgic in that sense of like, I felt like I was reading Divergent or Hunger Games, like books that I loved as a youth. And it was bringing that into adulthood with me, which was fun. But at times I was just like, this is familiar.
One thing that fantasy writers have to kind of think about nowadays, because everything has been done before, right? If it's not on TV, it's in books, is they have to find the right formula of familiar storylines, but completely unique storylines. And I don't know if this was a cognizant choice, but it definitely did feel familiar in not a good way.
It did feel like, oh, I've been here before.
Yeah.
The one thing is, I have no issue with art inspiring art, but it does cross a line at a point where you're just like, wait, I've been here before.
Emulation.
Yeah. It gave Dauntless. It gave Dauntless in the book. It gave Dauntless in the movie. And I was just like, I was just waiting for that. The
soundtrack plays.
Yeah, just like the Divergent track, you know, just like I can see it and I can hear it in my mind perfectly right now. And I felt that multiple times in this book. That's just like, I'm back.
That is a great point that I don't think I caught until you said that. So yeah, Dane and Violet, the best friend trope, never does as well as enemies to lovers.
And I did feel a little like excited potentially about Dane, but the second you meet Xaden, you're just like, oh, no, never mind.
Okay, to be fair though, I mean, very few men, fictional men, can compete with Xaden Ryerson.
No. And I have to get it through my head also that Dane is handsome, that Dane is like a good looking guy. Because when I see art of Dane, I'm just like, nope, he cannot be handsome. But on the reread, I didn't hate Dane as much as I did the first time, because I felt so betrayed by Dane the first time I read it. The second time, you're kind of like, okay, I know what's coming. And I was like, okay, we can do this. And I felt a little bad for Dane at times.
And you see that in the first half of Fourth Wing, basically up until Violet gets in a predicament where all the people go into her room. Up until that point, Dane is really trying very hard to get her into the scribe quadrant and to get her out of harm's way. I think Dane and Tamlin are in the same boat, that nobody likes them, but are they redeemable? Absolutely. I didn't hate Dane. I didn't hate him the first time because I could see if it were my loved one, I would absolutely do what Dane did. I can't say I would do any different. I would try and get them the heck out of there. And so, especially because of her bones.
Especially because of her weakness. It's like really unstable, loose joints.
Oh.
That they subluxate really easily.
Oh, that's the word that she loves.
Subluxate?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they don't fully dislocate, but they come out of place enough that causes like a lot of discomfort.
And so Dane has to see his best friend. So this is where those flashbacks would have been helpful. He has to see her go through pain and even like Imogen's fighting her at the very beginning. And he knows things that Violet doesn't, right? He knows why Xaden and the crew don't like her because of like the marks and all the things and what her mom did to him. She doesn't know that at that time. So she feels like, oh, well, why? But nobody's telling her. So one thing I didn't like about Fourth Wing in general is I don't like Violet. So, and a lot of it is her growing up. I can tell that she goes on a journey. She is just so childish. And she's like, oh, well, I want to be a writer. But then she complains about it the whole time. And I don't want to kill people. It's like, well, that's what writers do. Why are you here? And so I had a hard time relating to her or liking her as a character because I just wanted to smack her.
I think something that's worked against Violet is that everything's always been against her, right? All she had was her father, but she lost her father. Her mom's this big time general. Her sister's off. Her brother's dead. Her dad's now dead. She's left all alone, and her mom's forcing her into the writer's quadrant. She has to go. I feel like she's just always climbing up from the bottom. And I think after a time, like, anybody would get bitchy about it, right?
Yeah, but then why does she want to be a writer?
One thing that I do like, though, you kind of see this process with Dane because he's constantly like, we need to get you out of here. We need to get you out of here. And she reaches a point where she's like, no, like I've earned my way here. I'm staying. And I think we have Brennan to thank for that because Brennan's journal really kind of helped her.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Get in and say like, no, I am going to do this. And I think because she's always been the underdog, because she's always been the weakling, I think she finally got it in her head of like, no, I'm going to do this and you're not going to get in my way. And I'm going to make it as a writer.
She does hit I don't want to say a breaking point. She hits
there's a turning point.
A turning point. Thank you.
I think that's when she protects Andarna. I think that's when she's like, I'm committed.
I think it happens even before that because she really fights for the gauntlet and she fights to get to the dragons.
It's after her conversation where Xaden says like, you don't have to do it exactly the way that they tell you to. Like you can get creative. Because that's when she decides to put her knife in.
Yeah. She goes from surviving to thriving.
Yeah. I think she finally is able to say like, I can do this and I can do it my way. And that's great. It doesn't mean she's not a whiny bitch because she is. She is.
She is.
She's obnoxious and she's young and she's immature and she does kind of drive you crazy.
Yeah.
But there's also things about her that I really do like. And part of that is her resilience. I really do like how resilient she is.
I wonder if Rebecca Yarros, while she was writing Violet, thought those things Like, let's make her whiny, or let's make her not palatable in this moment, or if that just kind of happened.
Something that was hard for me was to switch from, this is not a 16-year-old, she's like at least 20. I think that was a hard like mental shift for me. I think maybe because she does act kind of like a 16-year-old, but at the same time, this is a college. They are doing college kid age things. And I had to like, okay, they are allowed to do this and it's not inappropriate. It's fine.
I'll come back to that when we talk about Iron Flame, because that comes in to Iron Flame a little bit. But going on to like the later half of Fourth Wing, basically after the dragons, let's talk about that.
Can I say one thing about Dane? You were talking about how Dane knows things that Violet does not. And that's one reason why he is super protective. And that just makes you think of, in Iron Flame, they talk about how your second year breaks you.
Oh, yeah.
In your second year, they try to break you. So if you think about Iron Flame and what Violet goes through in her second year, and then put Dane in that position while he's trying to take care of Violet, it kind of helps you understand a little bit more why he acts the way he does and does the things that he does.
Why do you think Dane has such a hard time breaking the rules?
I look at Dane a lot the same way that I look at Kale. I think Kale from Throne of Glass, in case anybody needs to know that. But I think he's raised again in like a general's home. There's very strict rules, and that's all he's ever known. When you get to a place with so many things up in the air that are unsure, you could die at any moment. Why not follow the rules exactly? If I follow the rules, I'll be safe. And that's been his experience this whole time. If I don't break the rules, I'm going to be okay. And so that's all he's ever known. And I think that's why he is just like, no, you follow the rules.
I would agree with that. I haven't been in a military house, but I mean, Rebecca Yarros has. And so she kind of drew from inspiration maybe in her own home or from a military background, maybe. I don't know that for sure, but like maybe that's why that's why Dane is the way he is. Oh, Dane. So you meet Xaden. Everyone knows that Xaden's the one, right?
Yeah. Got the enemies, forbidden romance happening. Their
tension was real nice. I will say that.
Yarros knows how to write a love interest.
She does.
That is one thing that I can really appreciate about Yarros's writing, is that her love interests are great, and I actually feel like her relationships, her writing, including like some of the spice when it comes to relationships, I was like, oh, I like this.
Yeah. It was done really well because there was a really good balance of tension to action. When the dragons finally bond, I mean, there's already tension happening, right? And then you learn that Taryn and Sigale are mates, and then they, are doing something. They're getting it on back in the love nest. I don't know.
Which was weird.
I mean, logistically, it makes sense.
No, but them feeling it and it stirring things in them was weird.
I think it was funny how like Xaden was out smoking a cigarette.
He was like out getting high. Whew. Just like I imagined it as like Basgiath's weed, smoking a joint, taking the edge off.
Yeah, taking the edge off. Something to take.
And Violet's just like, what is happening?
Yeah,
and why is this happening?
That's when then they start making out, right?
Yes,
because they finally give into it. So much good like tension, and then they break it off. But what happens during that,
while they're making out, lightning strikes.
So that's her first experience with her signet,
though she does not recognize it, but Xaden
does. But I mean, he's a third year, like he's got to kind of be aware of things, and also he knows things. Spoiler alert for Iron Flame.
He knows all the things.
I loved the descriptions of the dragons and how they rule themselves, and how there was a divide between the two, because I mean, honestly, what human's going to rule dragons? And these dragons are intelligent beings, right?
Frankly, I would read a book about the dragons and their hierarchy.
I would too.
I just take out the humans. I just want the dragons.
Or maybe even the first 6. That could be cool.
I would be down for that.
Yeah.
Seriously, the dragons are a high point in this book. The people,
they're there.
They're there. Xaden, we love him.
Yes, we do.
He's a book boyfriend forever. He's spectacular, but give me the dragons.
Yeah. Taryn, like, especially, I would have loved to see, like, a prequel with Taryn and Sigale, like, getting together. I think that would be cute. But honestly, Taryn is just, like, Mr. Sassy Pants, and I love it.
He is so sassy and just, like, says it like it is all the time. But I also love how sweet he is with Violet.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that this alpha dragon, like one of the most powerful in the valley.
It's him and Coda. They're the top dogs.
Him like being this top dog and also just being like, yeah, I'll wear a saddle so that you stay on. Whatever.
Yeah, he does. He gives zero
toots.
Really trying to censor myself here. He gives zero toots about what the other dragons think, about what any human thinks. It's great. He has so many good quotes that maybe I'll mention throughout, but he's just so freaking sassy and I love it. The dragons and how they're described are very interesting to me because it's like oranges kind of have this thing and greens kind of have this thing. And
they do kind of have their own special little abilities and personality types. I have a hard time picturing how large they are. Because sometimes they're described as massive. I mean, at one point, I think like they say Violet barely comes up past Terran's ankle. And so then I think about that, and it's just so hard for me to wrap my brain around it. Like I don't quite understand. And that might be a struggle in her descriptions, and it might just be, I don't know, it might just be what it is.
They also describe her like coming up to Andarna's chest, which Andarna's quite small for a dragon, right? She's a baby. Yeah. I liked how, like, especially with Mira and the green dragon, right? They say in an epigraph how green dragons have the ability to like help bolster wards and stuff like that. And Mira's signet is producing wards. She says that she has to be close to a ward and it just extends it. But we figure out that's not true
Their
later.
powers and signets are so interesting. I like the idea of it. And I think there's just times where it overwhelms me. Like I love that everybody gets a power in their bond with their dragon. I think it's really cool, but it kind of got lost and I was very befuddled in Iron Flame because of it.
What I didn't understand is why Violet was so upset about her signet, that it was a weapon and she really just wanted to do good. And I get that, but it's a signet. Sounds like 9 out of 10 signets are used as weapons. Not
some of the signets are weak sauce though.
Fire, ice,
attracting metal. Isn't
I'm thinking like
Sawyer's
Magneto.
Or Riddick's?
Yeah.
Which I have to say that I pronounced it Rhydock. And I'm not ashamed.
And I was not ashamed.
And I was not ashamed that I pronounced it Rhydock. But Riddick makes so much more sense. And I just don't know why I didn't think of that at first. I think it's because it wasn't a double D.
Let's talk about side characters for just a second.
Okay.
The side characters.
They're strong.
They're super strong. And it's because they're there for a purpose, and it's either to make someone laugh or to teach them hard truths. Mira, so good.
Mira is spectacular. I will say I did not appreciate the side characters until my reread. I think I was just so engrossed in trying to figure out what was happening that I missed the gems that are the side characters. But when I reread, I was like, oh my goodness, they're fantastic.
They are.
I like them more than Violet.
Yes, I think part of that is probably because you hear Violet's inner dialogue, and that is childish.
And that's probably one reason why, and also just the dialogue. I did make a note. The dialogue is really childish sometimes. And I don't know if that's her trying to write from like the perspective of a 20-year-old girl, but also from a female gaze perspective.
Oh, maybe.
But there's times where she's like, who effing cares as long as he keeps kissing me? And I'm just like, okay. It just kind of like gives me the ick, and it's really inconsistent because sometimes it's good and sometimes I'm just like, who is your editor and can I fire them for you?
Oh, yikes. And you see that in Iron Flame a little bit
Facts.
more. Mira's all-time favorite quote is "Figure your shit out."
That's a good one.
I mean, she's just so blunt, but in a way that is so funny to watch.
And you can tell that she loves Violet so much.
Yeah, she's protective older sister.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love that?
We love
It's what we wish Nesta was.
Don't. I will keep sending you Nesta memes and videos for the rest of my life because I love her. I need to reread Silver Flames. Okay.
Another thing I really liked, Sawyer was a second year, but a first year. And because sometimes I think...
Oh, yeah. Sawyer was a second year, first year.
Yeah. He didn't get a dragon, so he had to like repeat his year, but he finally got a dragon.
He slayed it.
I just gave some dimension to the character. Liked that. And he's just like a little sweet boy. And then...
So you've got Sawyer and Riddick and Rhiannon that are kind of like her inner circle.
Yeah.
And Rhiannon wins the award for the most stalwart, loyal friend.
Yes, she does.
Because first off, This was incredible of Violet to do. Violet's scared out of her wits. She's going across parapet, gives Rhiannon one of her shoes,
which
to help her cross safely.
I'm not entirely sure that would have helped, to be super honest.
To have one shoe with good grip, though, I think that would have made a difference. I'm gonna give Violet props.
Yes,
I know that
was there. The thought was there.
Ooh. Can we talk about the scene where Xaden rescues her?
Which time?
Okay, let's talk about when she bonds two dragons and some sunbees get jealous.
Okay, yeah.
And they try to murder her in the nighttime, and we get Xaden at full power, which was sick.
And that's not even really him at full power, I don't think. But when
but when you
comes
first
into
get
her room,
like a glimpse of like,
yeah.
ooh man, this man can do things.
Oh, Zaddy. He's top book boyfriend for me, for sure.
Yeah.
He is equally protective to letting her do her thing. And that's why he, I think, does so well. They don't want to be told what to do, but they also kind of want to protect her. It's kind of a weird balance we have.
That's a really good adept description.
It's
true.
It's the formula. It's the formula of...
But it's like, it's true in real life. Like, I want to do my own thing, but also like, be there for me.
Yeah.
Take care of me.
Yeah.
But also leave me alone. But be there.
Dear Zaddy Ryerson, he is just so good. First of all, just like from a look standpoint, is just beautiful, a beautiful human being. And I'm one for scars.
Very tall.
Very tall. I think the only fan art that I've seen that depicts that is Mads Schofield.
Looking for a man in finance. Trust fund.
I loved that little trend.
6'5", blue eyes. But he's none of those things except 6'5".
Yes, but
Looking for a man in Dragonland. Future
Onyx
king.
eyes.
Onyx eyes. Future king. 6'5", onyx eyes.
There you go.
There we go.
We'll make our own. He almost helps her at the claiming, or when they get the dragons. What is that called again?
Yes, the
Threshing?
threshing. I was about to call it the reaping. That's Hunger
The reaping.
Games. Threshing.
Threshing. Yes, because there's the gauntlet, and then there's threshing, which the gauntlet is kind of
The gauntlet
America's Ninja Warrior.
It's Wipeout.
It's Wipeout. That's exactly what I was.
Red balls.
Yeah. I had a hard time taking that seriously, especially when they die, because I was just like, isn't there just like a pool of water under there?
The other thing too is that they have ropes to hold on to. Mm-hmm. And so when people die, you're just like, oh, that really sucks because you really messed up.
You done goofed.
You done goofed.
Done goofed.
Although when her friend dies on that, ooh, that hits.
Yeah. There's a couple of deaths in both books that are like really out of left field. That was one of them. And then like in Iron Flame when the dragon comes in and like scorches half the
There's that one, but there's also when her friend's like, I'm Violet. And
yes, snaps her neck in Iron Flame. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Xaden, I have a theory about Xaden. And I
was excited. Sorry. I'm just enjoying the fact that like, and I hope the listeners are too, that we're just kind of like, ooh, this and this and this. And then,
ooh, this and this, this and this, this and this, ooh, this and this.
We're just all over and I love it.
We are a little all over today. But he says, you'll be the death of me 4 times in 4
times.
4 times.
This man is whipped. Do you think she's actually going to be the death of him?
I do. I think that's foreshadowing. I think Rebecca Yarros is really good at mapping out her entire plan and dropping little things in between. And I caught that on rereads.
Yeah.
So
she is good at mapping things out. Her execution is kind of poor. I mean, things were pretty clear for me, like at the school and going through their challenges. I kind of understood what was happening. But when they leave for their final, like, game and they end up, like, in the battle with the wyvern and everything, I was like, what's happening? And then suddenly Liam dies.
The pacing was a little off there.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah, because it's such a long, spread out drawl. And then all of a sudden you're at this game and you're like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And then she goes way into detail, like the ins and outs of that battle. And
with the venom?
Yeah, with the venom. And I'm still just like, okay, I know somebody hit the ground and got the life sucked out of them. Mm-hmm. And I know Liam dies. It was way clearer the second time, but the first time through, I was just like,
there's a lot going on in that one.
I don't know what's happening here.
I think that one thing that Rebecca Yarros does really well is she has an idea in her head. But you're right. She lets that govern her writing instead of letting the characters govern the writing, which SJM, the Queen of Fantasy, is known for the opposite. And I'm not saying that it's wrong to do it that way either. But it just like the execution has to be there. The characters need to do more of the driving of the story. Yeah, because it didn't make sense where they ended up.
She's taking them places instead of them taking her places.
Yes. One thing in that book, I will fight for Dane, especially in his redemption in Iron Flame. But when he says, "I'll miss you" to Violet,
no,
I was instantly like, nope, never coming back from that. You find out later that he actually means like, oh, you're choosing Xaden. It wasn't, I'll miss you because you die.
I think I like screamed when I read that at first. I was just like, you are freaking kidding me. I knew. I was like, he's been touching her head. Like he's been seeing things. This is not cool. And then all of a sudden she's off on a death march. And this is where Violet really hits peak obnoxious, is when she's like, you've been keeping secrets from me. It's like, girlfriend, you caught him. You were in a tree and you caught him having a secret meeting with people. Like, right. You know, this man is like fighting a whole battle that you don't even know a blip of. And now you're just getting pissed at him because you had sex a couple times.
Yes, that is not my favorite. And this is why Violet is not my favorite in general. Her reactions are childish. It's not even her thoughts are. Her reacting to information is childish.
Now, granted, if I was like going on a mission with Xaden and then suddenly we were meeting up with flyers, is that what they're called?
Yes.
I would be like, what's happening?
That's true, but that's
I would be like, I think I would be like kind of upset. Like, wait, what? But you're just barely learning things about him. Like, yeah, you blew up your armoire and you had some great relations, but you don't know everything about him.
But she also knows that he's like the leader of his group.
Yes.
At the time, it's of his group at college. And then you find out in Iron Flame, it's of a much bigger movement. He's the leader. Why does she... I mean, if I were in her place, I'd be like, oh yeah, he's off doing hot girl shit. Like, he's off doing stuff. It bothers me that she gets so upset about it. Yes, you can ask for transparency, but he's the leader of a movement.
But for them to have been together for, I mean, let's see. They get together and then she's like, if this isn't for real, like if we can't be together, then we can't keep doing this. And so then they go a couple of weeks. And then it's like the graduation, like party or something like that. And that's when she walks out into the parapet and she's like, no, I want this for reals, for reals. So then they do it. And then the next morning they go off on that mission. And that's when she's like, you have been dealing arms to the flyers. And he's like, yeah. And then they go fight this giant battle. Their friends die. And then she's like, you've been keeping... It's just like, you've been together for a matter... Like, he doesn't even have the time. He doesn't even have the time to discuss and like lay anything out on the table.
Do you think he would have?
I think maybe if it had gone on a little bit longer, he would have been like, hey, we need to talk about some stuff. But they didn't even have the opportunity to talk about anything.
Yeah, things were happening. Liam's dying.
Liam is dying. And that is one of the most heart-wrenching deaths.
It really is. In any book I've ever read, that probably is right up there with the 13.
It's like Sirius Black, Fred Weasley, the 13, Liam.
And it's really sad. Why do you think that writers die but dragons don't?
I think it's more because of the dragon's power. I think dragons are just way more powerful than measly little humans. We learn that if Violet dies, Taryn's done. We learned that in Iron Flame.
He could be done.
I thought he said... If you go, I go.
Yeah, but that's an Iron Flame.
Oh, you're just talking about from a Fourth Wing perspective.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
From a Fourth Wing perspective, I just think it's a matter of power. I just think we can't, as humans, fully grasp the power of the dragon. I am talking about these dragons like they are real.
They are real. They're not real, but like they are real characters instead of side pieces.
Yes, no, they play a very key and important part in the Fourth Wing books.
I have a theory because like this whole franchise is all about the theories, right?
The theories. Which often go right over my head.
I don't like to buy into theories, but just piecing things together. My theory is Naolin.
Yeah.
Terrence First Rider is alive, but he's Venin because his signet was siphoning. He says, I think Taryn is asked about Naolin, like Violet
does
asked him, and he
not.
goes, we do not talk about those who came before. And like, that's it. There's no confirmation that he died.
This is true.
I think there was some mumbo jumbo that happened.
This is something that my dumb reader brain, I think, can grasp. There's some
and I
goodness to that.
think Naolin and Brennan were like lovers. And
okay.
something happens, and that's why Sigale doesn't like Brennan.
Did you see Brennan being alive? Like, did you see that coming?
No, I did not, but I wasn't shocked either. I was like, oh, like just maybe a staple of the genre. There's a line that Liam says when they're at that party, like with the general at the very end, and he goes, oh, Brennan would have hated this or something like that.
He kind of talks about him like he knows him because he does.
And that went over my head until the reread.
Yeah, 100%. I was there too. That was when I picked up on in my reread. I was like, a mention of Brennan.
These books were better reread.
Amen. Because as we jump over to Iron Flame, I hated Iron Flame the first time I read it.
I think most people did.
I think it's because, and I figured this out when I reread it, I think it's because I had expectations. I don't know what they were, but like...
The CC3 effect.
The CC3 effect. But I think I just like inside wanted certain things to happen and they didn't. And I was just like, what the hell did I just read? I was so mad, particularly at the ending. I liked the first part of Iron Flame, even on my first read.
Okay.
But I liked it a lot. I think I bumped it up to like 4 stars after I reread it. I think it's because I was able to like, expectations are gone. We're just reading it for what it is. And for what it is, I liked it. It was a 4-star read.
Yeah.
On a reread, though.
I want to say Iron Flame was a 3.5 for me. I hated the first part. I liked basically after the shower scene. And I was like, okay, I'm here for the ride. But it's because it's so slow. And I
Did
think
you not
maybe
like the
that's-
shower scene?
I mean, who doesn't like the shower scene?
Okay, thank you.
I mean...
I don't know why, but I like Rebecca Yarros' spice. I think it's about at a level that it's like not too much for me, that I'm just kind of like, oh, this is good. Like I like
And
this.
it's short. It's usually just short. Little...
It's not like super long. Although the throne scene is a lot longer. I noticed that on the reread, but there's a lot happening in that because she's in his head.
Yes.
Before we get there though, let's talk about part 1 a little bit because we're really popping around.
Okay. When you said she's in his head, I just like went
You're
to
like,
9-year-old
I'm there,
boy.
chapter 48.
Oh no.
Of course you did. Oh, I adore you. Officially jumping into Iron Flame, we just want to give some official information here. Iron Flame was released November 7th. So Fourth Wing came out May 2nd. That was nuts to me. Like I said, I read Fourth Wing in October, and then when the second book was coming out in November, I was like, what? What a gift.
Good timing. Yeah, good timing.
What a gift. It was announced 2 days after Fourth Wing's release. It was expedited due to consumer momentum after Fourth Wing.
Makes sense.
It sold over 500,000 copies on release day.
That wasn't a great release. Do you remember all the trouble with the publishing?
Messy release for sure.
They sent out like copies to compensate people because they came from different vendors, and everyone was kind of upset about the whole like...
There were misprints and damaged prints, and I just went to my local bookstore and it was great. Okay, now part 1. You didn't like it.
I didn't like part 1. I hate, with every visceral part of my soul, miscommunication tropes. They are childish. They are a lack of creativity on the author's part. I hate it. Unless it like makes sense somehow, but it never does. It never does.
Go off, queen.
And when they both won't talk to each other, or when he's like, you have to ask me things, but I'm not going to volunteer this information. It's just like, this is dumb. Both of you are being dumb, and I don't like it. Like, I can't with it. And it was a lot slower.
There was a part of me that kind of enjoyed Zayden's just like, hate me, whatever. That he was just like,
I'll be here.
Like, you know that you love me. I don't know why. I
that
thought
was cute, actually.
But Violet, I was just like, girlfriend, you have been banging this man for like 2 weeks. Okay? Let's chill out a little bit.
Well, at that point, wasn't it just I want to say one night, but I guess there was 2 nights.
2 nights.
And then they had gone a while because then they found out everything.
Yes.
So they're traveling back and forth. What I really didn't love, Varish. I did not like Varish, but like, who does?
No, you're not supposed to like him. Did you like him from a villain standpoint, though?
Yes, but what I felt, it was so disconnected. It's like, this was the one plot, this was another. I felt like it should have been almost 2 different books.
Oh, it should have, absolutely.
Or
Part 1 was one book, part 2 was another. That's the way that I like to read it. I even took a break when I was rereading it. I think I did part 1 and then I read like a quick Hermione or something and then I read part 2.
Okay.
They are 2 separate entities.
I think it would have done better if Varys would have died more towards like 70-80% into the book, like maybe right before the climax of the book. He was shaped as the villain.
The book has 2 climaxes. It really does.
So did Violet. I apologize to your mother.
No, the miscommunication trope. I think at one point I was like, meh, it's fine. And now I'm just like, it's ridiculous. Like, when was there even time for Xaden to even begin to explain the ins and outs of this rebellion? When was there even a moment to be like,
when they're in his little keep, he could have said a lot of things there, and he didn't.
When they're with Brennan?
Yeah. At the very beginning, he could have explained a hell of a lot.
He could have explained a lot. It's true. And he didn't. I love that Brennan's still a good guy here because, you know, my theory. I think that he might be sketchy. But it was a risk to tell Violet things. Mm-hmm. Dane getting into her brain, anybody, he knew what the second year entailed. Mm-hmm. He knew she was going to be tortured. And so why he couldn't tell her anything.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't think about that.
I wish he would have given her some reassurance of just like, I want to tell you everything, but it's not safe. Like, I just need you to know that I'm leading this rebellion. I want you to be a part of this, but I cannot give you the ins and outs because you are going to go through a lot. And boy, do they put those second years through a lot.
Let's talk about how in Fourth Wing, she's like, I just don't want to be like a liability or whatever. And she ends up being the liability because Dane touches her face. Like, I hate to say it, Violet, you are the liability.
You are the weakest link. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
She is the liability. She is the weak link.
Yeah.
And that's just the fact of the matter. It doesn't make him love her less. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make him trust her less. I think he trusts her. He just trusts that this information can't get out. But if there had been that communication, there would have been a plot, right?
Right.
That's what carried the first part. But the first part also has one of the greatest scenes and chapters in fantasy reads. This is one reason why I bumped Iron Flame up to 4 stars, but also why I even gave it a chance. It is the torture scene chapters.
That's a good scene.
At the end of part 1. The scenes with Liam, the scenes where bringing Liam back in these visions was probably one of the best decisions Rebecca Yarros has ever made.
I think he's dead. Actually, I think she has said he's dead.
Oh, he is dead, no doubt.
But him being there in her moments of needing him.
Even if
beautiful.
It was just a piece of him from her mind. Mm-hmm. Like, I'll take it.
I love their friendship.
Beautiful.
It's very depressing, and just everything that she goes through. Everything she's been through growing up with all of her pain has led to this moment. It has led to her being able to hold out until help came, because she knew help was going to come. She even calculated it. If Xaden doesn't see me by this day, he'll come. She knows.
Yeah.
That's also a beautiful moment. And so the fact that Dane steps up here, by the way, is a beautiful moment of redemption where he kills Varys. He's the one who kills Varys.
Kills him.
And Xaden,
Violet kills him.
I think they both do. Because I think
Dane turns on him. He hurts him, but Violet's the one that ends it.
They work together.
But yeah, Dane comes in and he's given the opportunity to either hurt Violet or to change the game. And he changes the game and turns on Varys.
Mm-hmm. And just right at that time, Xaden comes. Also, her mom comes and lets them go.
Yes.
Beautiful moment. We love to see
Before we jump too far, though, I do want to share a quote.
Oh,
I have a quote. Liam says, "Hold the line, Vi." And then it's just like, life is varying degrees of pain, but Liam never leaves. He's there every time I open my eyes, watching, talking me through the torture, holding my sanity together while simultaneously proving it's already left.
Oh,
it was just
that's heartbreaking.
A beautiful, beautiful description of torture. I don't know. It just like beautifully written and described to feel like you're there. You were there in that prison cell with her.
Wild ride, that one.
And that's where we get Xaden's declaration of love, which is good. Like good.
He says a couple of declarations of love throughout the series. They're all just top.
But that one when
notch.
he's just like yelling at everybody, just like, I love her, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Blah.
And then he like tells her mom that basically.
Yes. Yeah.
Because is it her mom that's like, I need a moment alone with Xaden? And
Yes.
yeah, so great romance. But that is her background, right? That's Rebecca Yarros' background is romance. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's why she does it well. I have some logistics questions.
So do I.
I like just logistically a lot. It left a lot up in the air for me. I don't like plot holes. Like our wyverns hatched or made. There was a lot of world building in the way of you now get like the Isle Kingdoms, which I think we're going to see in the next books.
I agree.
There's a lot of talk about that, and then a lot of talk about the first 6. And I would not be surprised if she has a first 6 book ready to go.
And I would read that. The first 6, the runes.
Mm-hmm. The runes are dense.
I was so lost. And I still was a little bit lost the second time, but the first time I was just like, WTF. I have no idea what's happening here. Mm-hmm. It was so much. The getting from place to place, walking up the cliffside with the griffins.
Yeah, that wasn't needed.
I've read it twice now and I'm still not 100% sure what all goes down there.
Oh.
It's just confusing. Mm-hmm. Like her writing is just never very clear in those moments. There's also the scene where they're searching for the runes and they go into the cave.
Oh, and
then all of a sudden Varish's dragon's coming out and you're just like, what is happening? On the reread, I liked that scene more. The first time I was still a little bit lost because that's when Liam's sister learns that she's a siphon. Mm-hmm. And there's always so many moving parts.
Yes.
And it's just kind of hard to nail down exactly what's happening. I will say the final battle and the climax in this book is a little bit clearer than it is in Fourth Wing.
I would argue the opposite. But
really? I had a little better idea, maybe the tiniest bit.
There was better pacing.
There was better pacing.
It was drawn out a little bit more. You knew it was coming.
There still is a shiz ton of crap that goes down in the end.
Going back to the runes, they could have done a lot more description of runes. And she tried to write a little bit about the wards, but all of that information could have been brought up in the first half way more prevalently because like when they go to the library and have to like get the book of this first 6, all of that could have happened a little sooner.
Oh, forget
instead
about
of all
that.
this back and forth between outposts and stuff. I would really like to know more about the first 6 writers, but there was one line and it's in regards to their dragons, I should say. The first 6 writers in regards to their dragons. There's a line that says, the first 6 writers were desperate to save their people when they approached the dens. Those dragons formed the first Empyrean and bonded humans only to protect their hatchlings from venom. Who were the bigger threat? Neither species have been entirely truthful, both using the other for their own reasons and nothing more. So just the whole hierarchy and
like give and take.
Because in my mind, I'm like, why do the dragons need writers? Like, let's be real. Like, they don't.
Yeah. Why do they even agree to it in the first place?
So I think we're going to see more of that and more of the politics involved between the two, like humans and dragons. But another thing that is really confusing to me, Varish points out that Violet's dad was researching Feathertails. How was he researching Feathertails? He has to get close enough to a dragon, right? And then also, how is he communicating with them? I think Taryn also talks about like...
I think there's so much more to Violet's dad that we just do not understand, which would explain why Violet is the way that she is. Because she's like so good at being like knowing stuff from like a scribe perspective. She's also really good at being a writer.
Yeah,
despite her weaknesses,
Another thing that I didn't understand is Xaden's dad was actually infantry. He wasn't a writer. And in my head, I'm like, how can you lead a rebellion without a dragon? So overall, like logistics questions on my end.
So many logistics questions.
And Darna's another one.
And Darna, I really enjoyed her reveal. I was just
her being a different drag.
Of her being different. Mm-hmm. I thought that was kind of cool. I loved Darna. I loved her snarkiness as a teenager. I loved her sweetness as a Feathertail. She's fantastic. I love the dynamic between her and Taryn is spectacular.
It's beautiful.
This series so far has really high points and some really just like, what? Points. I'm excited to kind of see where it goes, but Darna's reveal I think was really cool. And then needing the 7 dragons to get the wards back up.
And their choice between doing that back at the keep
or at the college.
And Xaden makes that decision
to do it at the
college. And because she can only do it once, right? And Darna is only one dragon, which my other theory is that there's probably another one at least for mating purposes.
You'd think
that they'd spare two. It's like a Noah's Ark situation.
What pissed me off so much in the first read was what happens with Xaden at the end. I didn't see it coming. It's very Romeo and Juliet-esque of just like he could feel her power leaving because she was putting it all into the wardstone. And then he, the venom was also kind of talking him to it. But you can tell that as he feels her power leaving, he gives.
Yeah.
And it's very Romeo, Juliet.
That general, I have a theory, is Naolan, because Brennan is really the only one who knows, and he's not there. I mean, there's all sorts of weird questions to be asked about why he can speak to Xaden and Violet in their dreams. There are lots of what ifs with the Venin and Wyvern, and it'll just be interesting to see where Onyx Storm goes.
Can I tell you also
Storm?
Yeah, Onyx Storm.
Okay.
There was one part, and I still don't quite get it to this day, but it's when Xaden is talking, he's finally confessing to Violet what his second signet is. And he's saying that he asks her like how long it's going to take for her to fall out of love with him. And then she is kind of like, whoa. And he's like, just a matter of seconds. I'm like, she's not out of love with you.
Yeah.
Like I see that quote all the time and I'm like, yeah, it's heartbreaking because the man has feelings and you feel bad for him because he's so worried that he's going to lose Violet. But that line to me is just like,
it was just there for the drama, if you ask me.
Am I the drama in that moment? He was.
He was.
That was so dramatic to me.
He just loves her so much.
I saw an interview where Rebecca Yarros gave a Taylor Swift song to describe Onyx Storm or Violet in Onyx Storm. And she said, "Who's afraid of little old me?" And I'm a little terrified because that song is a lot.
It is a lot.
But it's so good. And so, of course, I will be reading it. I'll probably hate it the first read and I'll give it a second chance and it'll probably be better.
Yeah.
But I don't have like high hopes. I really don't.
I want to throw out some honorable mentions before we wrap this up. Okay. 1, Imogen and Rhiannon, badass bitches. Love them.
They are spectacular. I love strong females.
You said it earlier. Rhiannon is just the loyalist of friends. She knows something's happening, but she's letting Vi do it in her own time.
Oh,
I would not have done that.
The patience. There's one point where Violet says she tucks another thing in the box that's already overflowing of things that she has yet to tell Rhiannon. And I'm just like, you are so blessed that she loves you so much but also this is another book of like good female friendships. Like there is some competition. Imogen takes a little while to come around.
Right.
But she's also part of that rebellion.
And Sloane.
But they all become good friends. And I really love that.
Yes, it started out really catty, but also I guess you have to step back and say, yeah, like
people's lives are at stake.
Yeah. So I like where they ended up. I also want to give Auric a shout out. I
think Auric or Eric?
It's Aarick. So Auric.
I've always said it Eric, like Aaron, Aaron.
Neither of us is wrong, are we? I think that he is going to be shaped as a love interest in the next book, and they're going to go to the Isle Kingdoms because they mentioned that a few times. I want to shout out at the line that Violet gives Zane's ex-girlfriend. The thank you line. Thanks. That's a great line. If you don't know what I'm talking about.
Shout out to the throne scene because I was just great.
If you don't know, go look it up because I don't feel comfortable saying it out loud.
Yeah,
but it's such a great moment in their little romance. And I have all sorts of questions. Maybe we'll expand upon it in another episode, maybe when Onyx Storm comes out. But for now, we will just sit with our thoughts.
It's a cluster, and I'm here for it.
Thank you for joining us for our very long-winded, but ever so epic journey through the first 2 books in the Empyrean series.
Just remember, books are for everyone, books are for you, and we'll catch you next week. Bye. Good hell.